The morning sun was just starting to peek over the rooftops of the quiet suburban street, casting a soft, golden light through the bedroom window. Inside the small but cozy house, Maya was already wide awake. At 20 years old, she was at that age where life felt like a mixture of exciting new beginnings and the nervousness of still trying to figure everything out. She sat on the edge of her bed, brushing her long, dark hair, looking at her reflection in the mirror. She looked young, fresh, and entirely normal. Nothing about her screamed money or luxury, and that was exactly how she liked it. Today was a busy day. She had a long list of errands to run, and the first one was the most important. She needed to go to the bank. Maya grabbed her favorite tote bag, a worn-out leather thing she had bought at a thrift store years ago, and threw her phone and keys inside. She slipped her feet into a pair of simple white canvas sneakers that had seen better days and headed downstairs. The house was quiet because her husband, Ethan, had already left for work. Ethan was a busy man. He was the kind of guy who worked in finance and real estate, the kind of man who wore suits that cost more than most people's cars. But Maya didn't think about that much. She just knew him as the guy who made her laugh and who drank way too much coffee in the mornings. They had been married for 6 months, while the world saw them as an odd couple, the powerful millionaire and the simple girl next door. They just worked. Ever since they got married, Maya had insisted on handling her own spending money. She didn't want to just ask Ethan for cash every time she needed to buy groceries or a new pair of jeans. So, they had opened a joint account. It was supposed to be for household stuff, but Ethan had insisted on depositing a significant amount into it just in case. Maya never checked the balance. She just used her card when she needed to, assuming it was the same amount she always had. She had no idea that Ethan had recently transferred a massive dividend check into that account. Wanting to surprise her with the freedom to buy whatever she wanted for the house renovations they were planning, she walked out to the driveway, her sneakers crunching on the gravel. There, parked next to the empty space where Ethan's luxury sports car usually sat, was her vehicle. It was an old hatchback. It was a bit scratched on the bumper and made a funny rattling noise when you accelerated, but Maya loved it. It was reliable, and it was hers. She climbed in, turned the key, and the engine sputtered to life. The drive into the city center took about 30 minutes. Maya hummed along to the radio, tapping her fingers on the steering wheel. She wasn't thinking about the millions of dollars sitting in her bank account. She was thinking about the charity bake sale she was helping organize later that week. She needed to withdraw $200 to buy ingredients for her famous lemon bars. That was her only goal for the bank trip: get $200 and get out. When she finally reached the downtown district, the vibe changed completely. The streets were lined with expensive shops, and the sidewalks were crowded with people in sharp suits, talking loudly into their headsets about stocks and meetings. Maya carefully parallel parked her little car between 2 shiny SUVs, feeling a little out of place. She locked the door and walked toward the Sterling Bank. Building it was a massive structure with glass doors that stretched 2 stories high. As Maya pushed the heavy door open, a blast of cold air conditioning hit her face. It was freezing inside. The lobby was huge, with marble floors so shiny she could see her reflection in them. The ceiling was high, with fancy chandeliers casting a bright, white light over everything. Maya hesitated for a second just inside the door. She looked down at her outfit. She was wearing a simple floral sundress she had ordered online. It was light and comfortable, perfect for the warm weather. But looking around, she realized she was the only one not wearing designer clothes. The men were in tailored suits, and the women were in high heels and carrying handbags. That probably cost more than her car. She smoothed down her dress and took a deep breath. "Don't be silly," she told herself. Asterisk, everyone has to go to the bank. You have every right to be here. Asterisk, she walked toward the row of teller stations. There were about 5 windows open, but the lines were short. Most of the people in the lobby were standing around talking or sitting in leather chairs in the waiting area, looking important. Maya clutched her worn tote bag a little tighter against her chest. It felt like a shield. She got into the line behind a man who was speaking aggressively into his phone. "Sell it. I don't care about the risk. Just sell it," he barked. Maya took a small step back, not wanting to eavesdrop. She felt a sudden pang of insecurity. She was just a girl who wanted to make lemon bars. What was she doing in a place like this? But she pushed the feeling away. She was Ethan Clark's wife, even if she didn't feel like a Mrs. Clark most of the time. She had an account here. It was legitimate. The line moved quickly, and soon it was her turn. The teller station was enclosed in thick glass. Sitting behind the counter was a woman who looked to be in her 50s. She had stiff gray hair pulled back into a tight bun and wore glasses that sat low on her nose. "Her nameplate," said Mrs. Gable. Maya stepped up to the glass and put on her best, polite smile. She reached into her bag and pulled out her bank card. "Good morning," Maya said, her voice sounding a little too cheerful in the quiet. "Serious Bank," the teller, Mrs. Gable, didn't smile back. She looked up from her computer screen, her eyes scanning Maya from head to toe. Her gaze lingered on Maya's casual sneakers, then traveled up her simple dress, and finally settled on the worn-out tote bag. The look in her eyes wasn't friendly. It was a look of pure judgment. It was the look someone gives when they think you don't belong. "Can I help you?" Mrs. Gable asked. Her tone was dry, flat, and completely uninterested. "Yes, please," Maya said, undeterred. She slid her card under the glass partition. "I would like to make a withdrawal today. Just $200, please." Mrs. Gable picked up the card. It was a standard debit card, nothing fancy about it. She held it between two fingers like it was something dirty she needed to discard. She typed the account number into her computer with slow, deliberate clicks of her keyboard. Tap, tap, tap. The silence between them stretched out, heavy and uncomfortable. Maya stood there, rocking back and forth on her heels slightly, waiting for the machine to beep so she could just get her money and go. Suddenly, Mrs. Gable stopped typing. She stared at her computer screen. Her eyebrows shot up so high they disappeared under her bangs. She squinted at the monitor, as if she thought the numbers on the screen were a glitch in the system. She looked back at Maya, then at the screen again, then back at Maya. Maya felt her stomach do a nervous flip. "Is something wrong?" she asked softly. Mrs. Gable didn't answer right away. She turned her head slightly and whispered something to the colleague sitting at the next station over. The colleague glanced over at Maya, eyes wide, and whispered back. Maya's heart began to beat faster. She hadn't checked the balance in ages. Was the account empty? Had she forgotten to pay for something and overdrafted? No, that didn't make sense. Ethan had said he handled the big transfers. "I need to speak to the manager," Mrs. Gable said suddenly. Her voice wasn't a whisper anymore. It was loud and firm. "Excuse me?" Maya asked, confused. "I just need $200. I cannot authorize this transaction," Mrs. Gable said, closing the window hatch with a loud thud, locking Maya's card on the other side. "Not without verification." She reached over and pressed a red button on her desk. Maya stood there, stunned. The man behind her in line sighed loudly, checking his watch. The bank lobby, which had felt quiet and dignified a moment ago, suddenly felt very hostile. Maya looked around and realized that everyone was watching her. The man on the phone stopped talking. The women in the leather chairs stopped their conversation. All eyes were on the girl in the floral dress who was apparently causing trouble. Mrs. Gable sat behind the glass, arms crossed, staring at Maya with a look that said she knew exactly what she was doing. And she wasn't going to let Maya leave easily. The air in the bank felt thick, and Maya had a sinking feeling that her simple errand was about to turn into a disaster. The few seconds that followed felt like an eternity to Maya. She stood rooted to the spot, her hand still hovering slightly above the counter where she had slid her card. The glass partition seemed thicker now, like a barrier between her and the rest of the world. On the other side, Mrs. Gable sat with her arms folded, her expression unchanging. She wasn't looking at Maya with curiosity. She was looking at her with a distinct lack of respect, the kind one might reserve for someone found digging through trash rather than standing in a prestigious financial institution. "I don't understand," Maya said finally, breaking the heavy silence. Her voice wavered just a little, betraying the calm she was trying to fake. "Why do you need the manager for a cash withdrawal?" "I do this all the time," Mrs. Gable sighed, a long, exaggerated exhale that fogged up the bottom of her glasses. She didn't answer Maya directly. Instead, she turned her head slowly to the side and exchanged a glance with the teller at the next station. That teller, a younger man with a nervous demeanor, quickly looked away, pretending to be fascinated by his keyboard. "Protocol," Mrs. Gable said, turning her cold eyes back to Maya. "When certain flags appear on an account, we follow strict protocol. You will just have to wait." "Flags," Maya repeated, feeling her face get hot. "What kind of flags? Is my account overdrawn? Did I lose my card?" She knew deep down that she hadn't lost it. She was holding on to her tote bag for dear life, but the sudden accusation in the air made her question herself. She thought about Ethan. He was always careful with their finances, but maybe he had switched banks. Maybe they had moved their money and forgot to tell her. No, that was impossible. He had told her just last week to use this card for the household supplies. The line behind Maya was growing restless. The man in the expensive suit, who had been shouting into his phone, tapped his foot loudly. He cleared his throat, a guttural sound that was clearly meant to tell her to hurry up. Maya stepped to the side slightly, trying to make herself smaller, trying to apologize with her body language, even though she hadn't done anything wrong. She felt the eyes of the people in the lobby boring into her back. She could sense them judging her outfit again, her sneakers, her lack of expensive jewelry. In a room full of sharks, she felt very much like a baitfish. After what felt like 5 minutes, but was probably only 2, a door marked private opened near the back of the bank. Out walked a man in a crisp, dark suit. He was older, perhaps in his 50s, with silver hair combed perfectly to the side and a name tag on his lapel that identified him as the branch manager. His name was Mr. Higgins. He walked with an air of absolute confidence, looking like he owned the marble floor he was walking on. He didn't smile. He walked straight to Mrs. Gable's station. Whispering with her briefly, Mrs. Gable pointed a finger at Maya. That small gesture felt like an accusation. Mr. Higgins turned his attention to the young woman waiting by the glass. He didn't walk around the counter to greet her. He stood behind the safety of the teller station, looking down at her through the glass. "Miss," he said. His voice was deep, commanding, and lacked any warmth. "Could you please step over to the counter? We need to verify some details." Maya's heart skipped a beat. "Is there a problem with my account?" "There are some discrepancies," Mr. Higgins said vaguely. He unlocked a side drawer and pulled out Maya's card, holding it up between 2 fingers as if it were evidence in a crime scene investigation. "Please." Maya walked over to the gap in the glass where transactions were usually passed through. She felt incredibly small. Mr. Higgins was a tall man with broad shoulders, and he used his height to loom over her. "Now," he began, holding a clipboard in his other hand. "This account holds a very significant balance. A balance that does not typically match the profile of the cardholder." Maya blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "It's my account." "It's a joint account." "Joint," Mr. Higgins repeated, raising an eyebrow. He looked at his clipboard, then back at her. "According to our records, the secondary name on this account belongs to Mr. Ethan Clark. Does that name ring a bell?" "He's my husband," Maya said, feeling a spark of indignation. "Yes, of course it rings a bell. I just told you that." Mr. Higgins let out a short, dismissive scoff. He looked at Mrs. Gable, and the corner of his mouth twitched. It was a look of shared skepticism. "Right, your husband. Ethan Clark. The real estate developer?" "Yes," Maya said, her voice gaining a little strength. She was proud of her husband, even if she didn't like to brag about him. "He works in real estate and tech. Can I please just have my card and the cash? I'm in a bit of a rush." Mr. Higgins didn't move. He stared at her, his eyes scanning her face, looking for cracks in her story. He looked at her cheap canvas shoes, then up to her simple cotton dress, and finally to her face, which was flushed with embarrassment. "It is highly irregular," Mr. Higgins said, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial tone, though he knew perfectly well the people in line behind her could hear every word. For a man of Mr. Clark's stature to allow unrestricted access to these kinds of funds to someone so young? And with no apparent credit history of your own attached to the file, Aya felt the blood drain from her face. Excuse me? I'm 20 years old. I have a right to be here. This is my money, too. We have to be careful about identity theft, Higgins said smoothly, though his tone was accusatory. People often steal wallets and find pins. They come in here dressed like students, hoping to make a quick withdrawal before the owner notices. We see it all the time. The implication hit Maya like a slap in the face. He was calling her a thief. Right there in the middle of the bank, in front of at least 10 other people. I am not a thief, Maya cried out a little too loudly. Her voice echoed slightly off the high ceiling. This is my ID. Look at the picture. She fumbled in her bag, desperate to prove herself. She pulled out her driver's license and practically shoved it at the glass. Higgins took it, but he didn't look at it with any urgency. He studied it for a long moment, comparing the face on the plastic card to the flushed, anxious face standing in front of him. This address, Higgins said, tapping the license. It's in the suburbs, not the Highlands. Okay, we live there, Maya insisted. We just moved in, I see, Higgins said. He handed the license back to Mrs. Gable instead of Maya. And you claim this $200 is for what purpose exactly? Groceries. Maya lied, just wanting it to end. She didn't want to tell them about the bake sale. She was sure they would laugh at that too. I need to buy food. $200 is a lot of food for one girl, Mrs. Gable chimed in from her chair. She hadn't typed anything on her computer in minutes. She was just watching the show, enjoying the power she had over this young girl. Maya couldn't believe what was happening. She was being interrogated for trying to withdraw her own money. She looked around, pleading with her eyes for someone to step in to say something. The man behind her checked his watch again and groaned. Can we move this along? Some of us have actual businesses to run. I'm trying to handle this, Maya snapped at him, tears stinging the corners of her eyes. She turned back to the manager. Just give me the cash or give me back my card. I'm leaving. I'm afraid I cannot do that, Mr. Higgins said, his voice hardening. Not until we verify the funds are indeed yours. And frankly, with the large deposit that came in this morning from a corporate entity, the system flagged it as high risk. We need to call the primary account holder to authorize this. And given the situation, he gestured to her outfit. We have reason to suspect potential fraud. You can't take my card, Maya said, reaching out her hand. That's stealing. Mrs. Gable pulled the card away, sliding it into her blouse pocket. It's evidence until proven otherwise, she said with a smirk. Maya stood there, frozen. The humiliation was washing over her in waves. She felt small, dirty, and unworthy. These people she didn't even know, had decided in the span of 5 minutes that she was a criminal just because she didn't look like them. She was just a simple girl in a floral dress, trying to buy baking supplies. And now she was being treated like she had robbed the place. She reached into her pocket, her hand shaking so badly she almost dropped her phone. She knew she had to call Ethan. It was the only way out of this mess. But as she looked at Mr. Higgins, standing there with his arms crossed, blocking her view, she knew that even making the call wasn't going to be easy. They weren't going to believe her until the big guns arrived, and she had a feeling the storm was only just beginning. The air in the bank seemed to get heavier, harder to breathe. Maya stood frozen by the counter, her hand trembling as she held her phone. The screen lit up with her husband's contact photo, a candid shot of him. Laughing on their wedding day, but looking at it now made her chest tight. She felt like a child being scolded in the principal's office, except she was an adult, and she hadn't actually done anything wrong. I'm going to call him, Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. She needed to hear Ethan's voice. She needed him to tell these people that she belonged here, that she wasn't a thief. He will straighten this out. Mr. Higgins didn't look impressed. He checked his own wristwatch, a heavy gold piece that glinted under the bright lights, and let out an impatient sigh. Miss, please. We have a line of customers. We don't have time for you to stage a phone call to some friend you put up to this. He is not a friend. Maya's voice cracked, rising in pitch. The stress of the situation was bubbling over. She couldn't believe they were treating her like this. He is my husband. Just dial the number. She tried to press the call button on her screen, but her fingers were slippery with sweat. Before she could connect, Mr. Higgins made a sharp gesture with his hand. He didn't touch her, but the signal was clear. "Robert," the manager called out. From the side of the room, a large man in a security uniform stepped forward. He was broad-shouldered, with a stern face and a radio clipped to his shoulder. He walked with a heavy tread that vibrated through the floor. Maya instinctively stepped back, bumping into the velvet rope that divided the lobby. "We aren't going to play this game," Mr. Higgins said, his voice dropping to a dangerous level. "You are causing a disturbance. You are holding up my customers and harassing my staff with this fraudulent claim." "Fraud?" Maya cried out. A few tears finally escaped, rolling hot down her cheeks. "I just want my money. You took my card." Robert, the guard, stopped right in front of her. He didn't say anything at first, just looked down at her with a blank professional stare. Then he placed a heavy hand on her shoulder. It wasn't violent, but it was firm. It was a hand meant to guide, but it felt like a trap. "You need to come with me, ma'am," the guard said. "Let's go over to the seating area, so we can sort this out without blocking the line." "I want to go to the seating area," Maya protested. She tried to shrug his hand off, but he was too strong. The touch of his rough uniform jacket against her bare skin made her shiver. "Give me back my card." "I'm keeping this card until the police arrive to verify your identity," Mr. Higgins said. He turned his back on her, dismissing her entirely, and spoke to Mrs. Gable.
"I'll lock down that terminal."
"Don't let anyone else access it." The word police hit Maya like a bucket of ice water. The room began to spin slightly. They were going to call the police on her for trying to withdraw $200. She looked around the lobby, desperate for a sympathetic face, but the crowd had turned hostile. The man in the suit behind her was shaking his head. A woman near the door was recording the scene on her phone, a smirk on her face. They all believed she was a criminal. They saw her cheap clothes and her distress, and they assumed the worst. It was a lonely, suffocating feeling. Maya felt small, invisible, and trampled on. She looked back at the manager, who was now ignoring her completely to reassure the next customer in line. "I apologize for the delay," he was saying in a smooth, polite voice. "Just a minor technical glitch." Technical glitch, Maya thought bitterly. That's what I am to them. She gripped her phone tighter. It was her only lifeline. With shaking fingers, she managed to swipe the screen and tap Ethan's name. She pressed the phone to her ear, her heart pounding so loud she could hear a rushing sound in her veins. Asterisk ring. "Ring, asterisk, please. Pick up. Please don't be in a meeting, please. Hello." Ethan's voice came through the speaker. It was calm, deep, and familiar. It sounded like safety. It sounded like home. "Maya, is everything okay? You never call me during work hours?" "Ethan," she choked out. Her voice was so thin and broken, she barely recognized it. "Ethan, please help me." "What?" The tone in his voice changed instantly. The warmth vanished, replaced by sharp alertness. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" "I'm at the bank," she sobbed, not caring who heard her anymore. "The Sterling branch on 5th. They took my card. They won't give me my money. The manager. He says I'm stealing. They called security." There was a pause on the line. A deadly, silent pause. Maya could hear him breathing on the other end. When he spoke again, his voice was low. It's vibrating with a controlled rage that terrified her, even though she knew it wasn't directed at her. "Who?" he asked. "Mr. Higgins," she whimpered. "And a Mrs. Gable?" "Please, Ethan. They're going to call the police." "I'm so scared." "Put him on the phone," Ethan commanded. "Hey, he won't talk to me," Maya cried. She looked at Mr. Higgins's back. He walked away. "Maya, listen to me," Ethan said. His voice was steady now, anchoring her. "I am coming. Do not leave. Do not let them take you outside. Stay exactly where you are. They're pushing me," she said as the guard nudged her shoulder again, urging her toward the chairs. "They want me to sit down." "Stop moving," Ethan ordered. "Tell them if they touch you again, they will regret it. I am 5 minutes away." The line went dead. Maya lowered her phone, staring at the black screen. 5 minutes. It felt like a lifetime. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her makeup. She took a shaky breath and tried to stand her ground. The guard Robert frowned when she stopped moving. "Ma'am, please," he said, gripping her shoulder harder. "Let's sit down." "Get your hands off me," Maya said. She was surprised by the strength in her own voice. It wasn't strong because she wasn't afraid, but because Ethan was on his way. "I don't want to use force," the guard warned, leaning in close. "You don't have to use force." A new voice boomed across the room. It wasn't Ethan. It was a woman from the line, an older lady with a kind face. "Can't you see she's upset? She's just a kid. Why don't you just give her back her card?" "Mind your business, ma'am," the guard snapped without looking at her. Maya looked toward the glass doors at the far end of the lobby. She felt helpless. She was trapped in a circle of judgment, with a heavy hand on her shoulder and a manager who viewed her as less than human. The humiliation was burning her skin, making her feel hot and cold all at once. She just wanted to disappear. Then it happened. The heavy glass doors at the entrance didn't open. They flew open. They hit the stops with a loud bang that echoed through the marble hall like a gunshot. The sound was so violent that everyone in the lobby jumped. The teller behind the counter dropped a stack of coins. The man on the phone stopped talking mid-sentence. A hush fell over the bank. It was that sudden, unnatural silence that happens when something unexpected shifts the atmosphere. Maya looked up, her blurry eyes trying to focus on the figure standing in the doorway. The silhouette was framed by the bright sunlight outside, making him look like a dark avenger. He stood there for a split second, scanning the room, his chest heaving slightly as if he had run from the parking garage. Then, he stepped into the light. It was Ethan. But he didn't look like the husband who kissed her goodbye that morning. He didn't look like the relaxed guy who drank coffee on the weekend. His face was pale, his jaw set like granite, and his eyes were blazing. He wore his suit jacket open, his tie slightly loosened, giving him a disheveled, dangerous look. He didn't walk to the information desk. He didn't wait for a greeter. He locked eyes on Maya instantly, seeing the security guard's hand on her shoulder, seeing the tears on her face. And his expression darkened into something terrifying. "Maya," he shouted, the sound of his voice cut through the tension like a knife. The security guard actually took a step back, his hand falling from her shoulder as if burned. Mr. Higgins spun around from the counter, his eyes widening in shock as he recognized the man storming across his marble floor. "Ethan," Maya sobbed out loud, her knees finally giving way. She leaned against the counter for support, watching him push past the line of people, scattering them like leaves in the wind. He reached her in seconds, ignoring everyone else. He didn't ask questions. He didn't ask for the manager. He just wrapped her in his arms, pulling her away from the guard, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. He smelled like expensive cologne and frantic energy. "I'm here," he growled into her hair. "I've got you." Then, he slowly turned his head to look at the manager, who was now standing frozen a few feet away. The look in Ethan's eyes was colder than anything Maya had ever seen. It was the look of a man who was about to burn the world down to protect her. For a moment, the only sound in the massive lobby was the soft, hitching sound of Maya's breathing as she buried her face in Ethan's jacket. She could feel the rapid thumping of his heart against her cheek, which was strangely comforting because it meant he was just as angry as she was. He held her with one arm wrapped securely around her shoulders, his hand resting on the back of her head, shielding her from the view of the room. Slowly, he pulled back just enough to look at her face. His eyes, usually so warm and full of laughter when he looked at her, were now scanning her skin for injuries. He reached out with a gentle thumb and wiped a tear track from her cheek, being incredibly careful, as if she were made of glass. "Did they hurt you?" Ethan asked quietly. His voice was soft, meant only for her, but it carried a terrifying vibration. "No," Maya sniffled, clutching the lapels of his suit. They embarrassed me. They took my card." Ethan straightened up, but he didn't let go of her. He kept her tucked tightly against his side. He turned his attention to the bank floor. The atmosphere had completely shifted. The arrogance that Mr. Higgins and Mrs. Gable had displayed only moments ago had evaporated, placed by a tense, uncomfortable silence. Mr. Higgins was standing a few feet away. The manager's face had lost all its color. He was staring at Ethan with a mixture of shock and dawning horror. It was clear now that he recognized exactly who was standing in his lobby. The fake husband the teller had mocked was actually a very real, very powerful, and currently very furious client. "Mr. Clark, Mr. Higgins," stammered. He tried to smooth down his tie, his hands shaking slightly. We didn't realize." There was a misunderstanding. Ethan didn't look at him yet. He looked at the security guard, a large man named Robert, who was now shifting his weight from foot to foot, looking very unsure of himself. "You," Ethan said, his voice low and dangerous. He pointed a finger at the guard. "Take your hand off my wife. If you ever touch her again, you won't have to worry about this job. You'll have to worry about a lawsuit." The guard quickly pulled his hands behind his back, his eyes wide. "I was just following protocol, sir." She was causing a scene. She was withdrawing her own money. Ethan snapped, his voice rising enough to echo off the marble walls. "And you treated her like a criminal. You put your hands on her." He turned his gaze to Mr. Higgins. The silence in the room was absolute. Every customer, every teller, and even the woman filming on her phone was frozen, watching the scene unfold. "Is this how you treat your customers here?" Ethan demanded, taking a step toward the manager. Mrs. Gable shrank back in her chair behind the glass. "Is this the service Sterling Bank provides? You humiliate a young woman, accuse her of theft, detain her against her will, and threaten to call the police." "Sir, please," Higgins started, sweat beading on his forehead. The account. It showed a massive sudden deposit. It triggered a fraud alert. The system flagged it. She doesn't match the typical profile of a high-net-worth client. We were just being cautious." He gestured vaguely at Maya's simple dress, as if that explained everything. It was the wrong thing to say. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "She doesn't match the profile? So in your bank, only people wearing $5,000 suits are allowed to have money. Is that it?" Higgins swallowed hard. "No, I didn't mean you didn't mean to get caught," Ethan cut him off. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his own phone. He didn't dial a number. He opened an app and tapped the screen a few times before turning the phone screen toward the glass partition. "Do you see this?" Ethan asked. Mrs. Gable and Mr. Higgins squinted at the screen. It was the corporate portfolio of Clark Holdings, and right there at the top of the list of assets was a massive ownership stake in Sterling Bank's parent corporation. "I own 12% of this institution," Ethan said, his voice calm but deadly. "I am on the board of directors. I am the reason this branch got its new renovation last year. I am the reason you have jobs." The realization hit the room like a physical wave. A few of the customers in the line gasped. Mrs. Gable looked like she might faint. She sank down in her chair, her face turning a deep shade of crimson. "And you," Ethan said, looking directly at the teller. "You smirked at her. You laughed at her. You held her card hostage because you think you're better than she is. Let me tell you something about that woman. She has more class in her little finger than you will ever have in your entire life." Maya leaned into him, overwhelmed but feeling a sense of relief wash over her. She wasn't alone anymore. The shark tank had turned into a fishbowl, and Ethan was the giant shark now. "I want her card back," Ethan commanded. He held out his hand, palm open. Now, Mrs. Gable fumbled with the drawer, her hand shaking so badly she dropped the card. It hit the counter with a clatter. She picked it up and slid it under the glass with a terrified apology. "And the money," Ethan added. "She asked for $200. "Get it." Higgins rushed to the cash drawer himself. He didn't wait for the teller. He counted out the bills with frantic speed, his movements jerky. He shoved the cash through the slot. Ethan took the money and the card. He didn't say thank you. He didn't say anything else to the staff. Instead, he turned his attention back to the room. He looked at the man who had been sighing behind Maya, the one who had been in such a hurry. The man was looking down at his shoes, pretending not to exist. "And as for the rest of you," Ethan said, his voice projecting clearly. You stood there and watched a young girl be bullied. You judged her by her dress and did nothing. Shame on you. He felt Maya squeeze his arm. Ethan, please, she whispered. I just want to go. He looked down at her, his face instantly softening. The rage was gone from his eyes, replaced by pure love and concern. Okay, Maya, we're going. What? But before they took a single step, he pulled his phone out again. I'm not finished here. Not yet. He tapped the screen once more and held it to his ear. It rang once, then twice. Arthur. It's Ethan, he said into the phone. Yeah, I'm good. Listen, I'm at the downtown branch. No, everything is not fine. It's a disaster. He locked eyes with Mr. Higgins as he spoke. I want the regional manager here within the hour. And Arthur, don't send an email. Don't send an assistant. Get in your car and come down here. We need to have a serious conversation about your staff's hiring practices. Specifically, the manager and the head teller. Because as of right now, they are fired. A collective murmur swept through the lobby. Mr. Higgins actually swayed on his feet, reaching out to grip the counter to steady himself. I don't care about protocol, Ethan said into the phone. I don't care about the union. You saw the footage? Good. Then you know what happened. I want them gone. Today. He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket. The silence in the bank was heavy, suffocating. No one dared to move. The power dynamic had shifted so violently that the air itself felt different. Ethan turned away from the counter, keeping Maya close. She was still trembling slightly, but she held her head up a little higher now. She wasn't the scared girl in the floral dress anymore. She was the woman standing next to the most powerful man in the room. Come on, Ethan said softly to her. Let's get you out of here. I'm taking you to get some real food, not just groceries. They walked toward the glass doors. The crowd didn't just part this time. They flattened themselves against the walls, desperate to get out of his way. The man who had complained earlier squeezed his eyes shut, wishing he could disappear. As they reached the doors, Ethan stopped. He looked back over his shoulder one last time. His gaze swept across the tellers, the guard, and the manager, who were all standing frozen in their disgrace. Fix your customer service, Ethan said loudly, or I'll shut this whole branch down myself. He pushed the door open, letting the warm sunlight and the fresh air rush in to replace the cold, judgmental atmosphere of the bank. He guided Maya out, leaving the silence and the terror behind them. The sunlight hit Maya's face like a warm embrace, instantly chasing away the chill of the bank's air conditioning. She took a deep breath, filling her lungs with fresh air, trying to calm the racing of her heart. They were outside. The heavy glass doors swung shut behind them with a soft thud, sealing away the judgment, the whispers, and the hostile stares of the staff inside. Ethan didn't stop walking when they hit the sidewalk. He guided her gently but firmly toward his car, which was parked illegally right in front of the building, the hazard lights blinking. He opened the passenger door of his luxury sedan and helped her in, treating her as if she were the most precious, fragile thing in the world. Maya sank into the soft leather seat, closing her eyes for a second. She felt safe, but the humiliation of the last 20 minutes was still sitting heavy in her chest. Like a stone she couldn't swallow, Ethan got into the driver's side and immediately turned to look at her. He didn't start the engine. He reached over and took her hands in his. His hands were big and warm, engulfing her cold fingers. Are you okay? He asked, his voice full of gentle concern. Did they hurt you when I wasn't there? Maya shook her head, though fresh tears were threatening to spill over. I'm okay. Just embarrassed, Ethan. Everyone was looking at me. They thought I was a thief. They looked at my clothes, and they just decided I was less than them. Ethan squeezed her hands tightly. They are fools, Maya. Small, ignorant people who think money makes them better than others. They don't know you. They don't know your heart. I just wanted to buy ingredients for the bake sale, she whispered, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I didn't want a scene. I just wanted to be normal. You're never going to be normal, Maya, Ethan said, offering her a small, sad smile. because you are extraordinary. And normal people don't get treated like that. He let go of her hands and looked through the windshield, staring at the bank entrance. Through the glass, he could see Mr. Higgins standing near the counter. The manager was on the phone, looking panicked, his face pale as a sheet. "I meant what I said in there," Ethan said, his voice hardening. "They aren't getting away with this." He pulled out his phone again. He didn't dial the regional board this time. He opened his email app and began to type furiously. "What are you doing?" Maya asked, sniffling. "Evidence," Ethan replied shortly. "I'm forwarding the contact info of the bank's CEO to my lawyer. I'm also sending him the footage from the bank's security cameras. I have access to the cloud feed as a shareholder. I want him to have timestamps of exactly when that guard put his hands on you and when that teller smirked." Maya watched him, her mouth slightly open. She knew Ethan was powerful, but seeing him wield that power so swiftly and ruthlessly on her behalf was overwhelming. He wasn't just defending her. He was dismantling the people who hurt her. "Can't just fire them all yourself, can you?" she asked. "Watch me," Ethan muttered, hitting send. "Or, at the very least, I can make the bank wish they had fired them before I got involved. That branch will have a new manager by dinner time. And Mrs. Gable? She won't be working in banking again. Not after I put a note on her file about harassment." He put the phone down and finally started the car. The engine purred to life, a stark contrast to the rattling of Maya's old hatchback. He pulled away from the curb smoothly. Leaving the bank and the chaos in the rearview mirror, they drove in silence for a few minutes. Ethan didn't take them to the grocery store, and he didn't take them home. Instead, he drove to a small, quiet park overlooking the city lake. He parked the car and turned off the engine. "I don't need groceries right now," he said, turning to her. "I need you to breathe. We can worry about the bake sale later. My assistant can buy out the entire bakery section if we need to." Maya let out a small laugh. It felt good to laugh. "You can't buy lemon bars, Ethan. You have to bake them with love. That's the point." Kay chuckled, reaching out to tuck a stray hair behind her ear. "Then we will go to the store. But first I have to ask, why didn't you call me sooner? You were in there for almost 30 minutes before you phoned." Maya looked down at her hands, twisting the strap of her tote bag in her lap. "I didn't want to bother you. You were in a meeting, and I guess I wanted to prove I could do it myself. I wanted to feel like I could handle the big, scary bank without hiding behind your last name." Ethan sighed, a long, deep breath. "Maya, look at me." She looked up. His eyes were soft, filled with an emotion that made her heart ache. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone," he said firmly. "Especially not to people like that. You are my wife. My money is your money. My status is your status. You are never bothering me. When you are in trouble, I drop everything. I don't care if I'm in a meeting with the president. You come first." "I know," she whispered. "I just feel like I don't fit into your world sometimes. Everyone is so polished and rich. I'm just me." "That's why I love you," Ethan said. "If I wanted a polished, rich wife who looked like a mannequin and cared about jewelry and status, they could have found one in a day. I didn't want that. I wanted the girl in the floral dress who bakes lemon bars for charity and drives a beat-up car because she likes it. You make my world human. You make it real." He leaned over and kissed her forehead. "Don't let bitter, unhappy people like that bank manager change you. If they think you aren't enough because of what you wear, that's their problem, not yours. And frankly, they paid a high price for learning that lesson today." As he spoke, Ethan's phone buzzed on the center console. He picked it up and glanced at the screen. A slow smile spread across his face. "What is it?" Maya asked. "That was the CEO of the bank," Ethan said. "Arthur and Mr. Higgins and Mrs. Gable have been officially terminated. Effective immediately. Security escorted them out the back door 5 minutes ago." Maya's eyes widened. "Already?" "I told you," Ethan said, tossing the phone onto the dashboard. "I have influence. And I don't tolerate people bullying my wife." He looked back at her, his expression turning serious again. "But there's one more thing. Arthur asked if we would come back in. He wants to apologize in person. He wants to give us a formal tour and make sure the staff knows who you are. Maya shook her head vigorously. No, absolutely not. I never want to go back in there. Ethan laughed. That's what I told him. I told him the only way I'd set foot in that branch again is if he renamed it after you. Ethan. Maya swatted his arm, laughing again. Okay, maybe not that, he grinned. But I told him we'd be taking our business elsewhere. I'll move our accounts to a private bank that understands how to treat clients. He started the car again. Now where is this grocery store? We have lemon bars to bake, and I'm going to help you. Maya raised an eyebrow. You don't know how to bake. I can learn, Ethan said, putting the car in drive. How hard can it be? I run a multi-million-dollar corporation. I think I can figure out how to mix flour and butter. As they drove toward the store, the tension of the morning finally melted away. Maya watched the city pass by, feeling lighter than she had in hours. She realized something important. She didn't need to fit into the shiny, cold world of the bank. She had her own world, one where kindness mattered more than suits, and where a husband would storm a building just to defend her honor. When they walked into the local grocery store a few minutes later, Maya was still wearing her simple floral dress and her worn sneakers. But she walked with her head held high. She didn't care if anyone looked at her. She pushed the cart, and Ethan walked beside her wearing his expensive suit, carrying a basket of lemons. People stared, of course. They always did. But this time, Maya didn't feel small. She just smiled at them. They might look at her and see a girl who didn't belong, but she knew the truth. She was the girl who had survived the sharks, and the shark was now happily squeezing lemons for her. Are we buying organic sugar? Ethan asked, holding up a bag. Yes, always organic, Maya said. Okay, boss, he said, dropping the bag into the cart with a smile as they walked down the aisle. Maya reached out and took his hand. He squeezed it back, tight and possessive. The bank incident was over. The bad guys had lost. And looking at her husband, who was willing to burn down the world to protect her, Maya knew that no matter what she wore or how much money she had in the bank, she was the richest woman in the city. She had something money couldn't buy. She had someone who would never let her fall.